Have you ever felt a yes or no inside your body before your mind could explain it? A slight tightening in your stomach, a subtle sensation in your chest, a discomfort with no name that insists on warning you about something? These whispers are not emotional inventions. They are the field's first language trying to reach you before rationalization. Intuition is a silent intelligence. It makes no noise, demands no logic. It anticipates what the mind will still process and delivers direction without needing to convince. But because it is so subtle, it is often ignored. And the more you ignore it, the harder it becomes to hear, until the signals must turn into shouts disguised as chaos. This inner voice does not come to dramatize. It comes to spare, to align. It is like the beginning of a song you do not yet know, but your body already recognizes the melody. At first it seems like static, but little by little, with presence and practice, that static transforms into direction, into rhythm, into signal. The most common mistake is expecting intuition to come with guarantees, but the field does not work with certainty. It works with frequency, and frequency does not respond to control, it responds to coherence. The cleaner your system's antenna, the clearer the whisper, and the faster the world begins to respond with synchronicity. Today, let's organize this intuitive process into a clear path, a map for feeling, interpreting, and acting with confidence, even without proof. Because true manifestation does not begin when you think, it begins when you listen. And when you learn to listen, the universe stops shouting. It simply confirms. There is an almost imperceptible instant between the event and your interpretation. In that space lives intuition. It does not arrive as a fully formed idea, but as a diffuse sensation, a chill in the stomach, a slight tightness in the chest, a sudden urge to step back, or an inexplicable impulse to move forward. Before you think, the body has already signaled. That signal is not imagination. It is biochemical and energetic. Your nervous system, highly sensitive to the field, picks up subtle variations of coherence before the mind has time to build a narrative. It is as if your biology hears the music before the lyrics and reacts with micro movements. Most people ignore that first touch. They are so conditioned to seek explanations that they let pass the most precise information they could receive, the one that came before doubt. Intuition is a pre-knowing, clean data before the noise begins. It does not come to persuade, it comes to direct. A powerful practice is revisiting moments in life when you knew, even without knowing why. Try to remember 3 decisions in which your intuition spoke before your mind. What did your body do? A knot, a shiver, a sudden withdrawal? Name these clues. Give them value. Create your own sensory dictionary. From there, adopt an internal code. Feel, notice, name. When something arises, do not rush to the mind. Pause, feel, observe, name. This process transforms a whisper into clear direction. And with time, you will realize the right signal almost always arrives before the thought. You only need to be still enough to listen. The human mind has been conditioned to seek safety before moving. It wants proof, guarantees, external validation before it trusts. But the quantum field does not respond to systematic doubt. It responds to the frequency emitted. The more you demand certainty, the more you vibrate insecurity. And the field simply mirrors that back. Resonance is not about certainty. It is about coherence. When something inside you aligns, body, emotion, intention, the field feels it. And when the field feels it, it responds. But that response rarely comes with fanfare. It arrives subtly. A sense of lightness when thinking about something, an inexplicable fatigue when considering another option, a door that opens effortlessly. The ego, impatient, calls this insufficient. It wants logic and a defined route. But the universe does not work with ready-made maps, it works with next steps. The clear signal only appears when you emanate clarity, and clarity does not come from explanation. It comes from listening and presence. When you feel confused, try changing the internal question. Instead of, how can I be sure of this? Ask, if it were simple, what would be the obvious next step? That question dissolves overthinking and invites the body to participate in the decision. Because simplicity often is what the field has been trying to show all along. Simplicity is not superficiality, it is alignment. When you act from what already feels light without waiting for everything to be guaranteed, you send the field a clean frequency, and the field, faithful to the vibration it receives, responds with synchronicities, flow, and confirmations that did not need to be demanded, only heard. The nervous system is the first to perceive energetic shifts, internal and external. It works like a vibrational antenna that picks up nuances long before any thought forms. When it is regulated, it allows access to intuition with clarity. But when it is in stress, everything becomes noise. Stress generates a distorted signal. When you are anxious, overloaded, or in constant alert, your perception narrows. The body enters defense mode, and everything is interpreted as risk. The antenna closes. The field, which emits subtle signals all the time, keeps transmitting, but you can no longer hear it clearly. This dysregulation is common, and it is not a personal failure. It is a learned pattern. But it can be dissolved with simple practices of presence. Conscious breathing, slow movements, gentle touches on the chest, brief pauses during the day, all of this communicates to the body that it is safe. And where there is safety, there is sensitivity. A short and effective practice: inhale for 5 seconds, exhale for 5 seconds, and bring your attention to the center of your chest. On the exhale, mentally say, "I am safe now." Repeat for 2 minutes. This reorganizes the internal rhythm, calms the sympathetic system, and reactivates the field of subtle listening. When the system is calm, intuition manifests again. You notice micro-messages, subtle cues from the environment, bodily sensations once overlooked. The inner world opens, and connection with the field becomes alive again. Not because you forced it, but because you cleared the antenna. Most of us were trained to decide with the mind, to weigh pros and cons, anticipate scenarios, rationalize until exhausted. But there is something more precise than thought: the state of coherence between heart and brain. When the heart leads, the mind follows with greater clarity. When the mind tries to lead alone, the body falls into confusion. States of elevated calm like tenderness, awe, or gratitude have the power to synchronize the rhythms of the heart with the impulses of the brain. This coherence creates a harmonic inner field where intuition can manifest clearly. Knowing does not arrive as an argument. It arrives as quiet certainty, even without explanation. It is common for intuition to arise first as a sensation in the chest, an expansion, a tightening, a sudden lightness. Only afterward does the mind find words. This order is natural. The heart feels first, because it does not need to process, only to perceive. The challenge is not to invalidate that feeling just because there is no logic yet to sustain it. You can train this state. 3 cycles of deep breathing focused on the chest, and then recall a real moment of gratitude. A simple but true moment. Allow yourself to feel that inner warmth again. And then ask yourself, what does this body already know that my mind has not yet spoken? That question opens a silent inner space where the answer does not need to come as words, but as direction. When the heart leads, life does not need to be controlled. It begins to be felt with more truth. And intuition at last stops being a coincidence and becomes a compass. Many people repeat intentions with discipline, visualize goals with focus, and affirm desires with conviction. But if the body is in alert, tension, or urgency, the field picks up another message. Because the universe does not respond to what you say, it responds to what you are while you say it. Your state is the true request. When the body is in stress, it transmits lack. Even if the mind says, "I want peace," the field receives, "I am at war." This incoherence between thought and vibration creates confusion in the signal, and the result is silence or an apparent blockage. It is not that the universe is denying your desire, it simply does not recognize the message. Joe Dispenza teaches that feeling must come before evidence. This means, feel now as if it were already real, not to pretend, but to train your system to recognize the frequency of what you want to live. By doing this, you alter your biology, your electromagnetic field, and over time, reality around you begins to reorganize. That is why before deciding something important, before declaring an intention or asking the field for a response, regulate your state. Breathe for 90 seconds, stabilize your frequency with an elevated emotion for 30 seconds, and only then formulate your question or direct your action. The difference in clarity will be immediate. When the body is in coherence, the field hears with clarity. The intention is no longer an anxious request, it becomes a clean emission. And what comes back as a response is not a concession, it is a reflection. Because in the quantum universe, manifestation is not attracted, it is resonated. And your current vibration is the code that organizes everything. Many people see synchronicity as a prize, something that happens when they deserve it, or when the universe, for some hidden reason, decides to gift them. But this view still carries an illusory separation between you and the field. The truth is simple. Synchronicity is not a random miracle. It is vibrational feedback. The field responds to signals emitted with clarity. When your vibration is clean, when your intention is aligned with your body and your emotion, reality begins to reflect it precisely. The right people appear, messages arrive, obstacles dissolve, but this does not happen by luck. It happens by frequency. Synchronicity is language. It informs, confirms, redirects. The universe speaks to you all the time, but it can only be heard when internal noise decreases. When you clear the antenna of hurry, fear, and doubt, the signs become visible, and what was once mistaken for coincidence is now understood as conversation. A powerful practice is to create a vibrational feedback journal. For 7 days, write down the synchronicities that appear, encounters, ideas, repetitions, unexpected solutions, and alongside them, record what emotional state you were in when they happened. At the end of the period, observe, do the signs appear more when you are more coherent? This practice teaches you that you do not attract what you desire. You tune in to what is already compatible with your field. And at that point, manifestation stops being an effort and becomes a consequence. The universe does not reward, it mirrors. And this makes life not only more magical, but far more reliable. There comes a point in the journey when, even after consistent practice, the world seems to go silent. Nothing happens, no clear response arises, and the signs that once came frequently simply disappear. This silence may feel like abandonment, but in truth, it is anchoring. The system needs pause to integrate. It is as if the field were saying, now you already have what you need, trust without training wheels. Silence is not absence. It is a transition of stage. It appears when you begin vibrating a new frequency with more stability, and the field no longer needs to shout to be heard. But the ego interprets this silence as error. It wants noise, signs, immediate confirmations. And when it does not get them, it screams inside you, something is wrong. But nothing is wrong. What is happening is refinement. The field is testing whether you truly sustain the new, even when it does not yet manifest visibly. At that moment, the most important thing is to maintain a minimal routine of coherence. Keep breathing twice a day with focus on the heart. Keep carrying out a micro-aligned action, small but vibrationally coherent. The flow may not be visible, but it is active. Your silent presence keeps the channel open. And above all, reframe the perception. Silence equals stabilization. When you honor this space without demand, the void becomes fertile. You stop chasing after signs and begin to become the sign yourself. Because when the noise ceases, what remains is your vibration, and that is what is being heard. Intuition is not a gift reserved for a chosen few. It is a natural human ability, but like any subtle sense, it needs to be trained. Not with effort, but with conscious repetition. Listening to the body, noticing small impulses, distinguishing fear from truth. This develops through daily practice. The first key is to remember, intuition doesn't shout, it whispers. That's why mindfulness is the muscle that strengthens it. And this muscle is exercised in simple moments. Opening a door, breathing before responding, noticing the silence between two thoughts. Listening is activated in the micro and consolidated in the macro. Use quick and repeatable practices as a little inner traffic light. Red to pause, yellow to feel, green to take a step, even a small one. This prevents impulsive decisions and creates space for body intelligence to enter before the analytical mind. Another practice is the 30-second body scan. Close your eyes, bring attention to your head, chest, and belly. Where does your yes live today? Where is the no? Each person feels differently. That's why sensory self-awareness is what transforms intuition into direction. The more you listen, the more it speaks. By training this inner radar in everyday life, you'll realize that intuition is not an extraordinary event. It is constant, always available, always present. And the more you honor the small signals, the more the universe organizes itself to confirm that feeling comes before knowing and is almost always right. Deciding should not be an isolated mental effort. True discernment happens when you include the body, listen to the field, and allow the mind to refine, not command. Every decision born only from the head tends to repeat patterns, but when body, mind, and field are aligned, the path unfolds with clarity and lightness. The first step is to feel what arises as the primary impulse before analysis. What was the first signal, even if you tried to rationalize it afterward? Often, the body already said no or yes through a tension, a lightness, a spontaneous movement. That is the purest data. Honor it. Then check, did your response come from fear, anxiety, or urgency? If so, it is contaminated. Regulate, breathe, bring the body into a state of neutrality and trust, and only then ask again. A decision made in alarm vibrates confusion. A decision made in presence vibrates direction. Next, act small. A vibrationally coherent choice does not require immediate big leaps. It can be a tiny gesture, sending a message, seeking information, rearranging a routine. The field doesn't need spectacle to respond. It responds to coherent movement. This cycle, feel, check, act small, turns decisions into vibrational expression. And when you start deciding this way, something shifts. The world stops being a place of doubts and becomes a place of confirmations. Not because it became predictable, but because your frequency became predictable, and the universe mirrors it with precision. There comes a moment when the seeker stops seeking. They realize they no longer need so many external signs, because coherence has already taken root within. At this point, intuition no longer needs to be confirmed. It is lived. The field no longer has to warn, it simply responds, and the flow which once seemed rare becomes natural. Becoming the signal is living in an elevated baseline state. It's waking up with presence, moving with silent intention, listening before acting. It's trusting that your vibration emits a clear direction and that the world responds not to your requests, but to your state. It is no longer about attracting, it is about being. People sense when someone lives in this alignment. They approach without knowing why. Opportunities appear with less effort. Time seems to organize itself with more kindness. Not because everything turned easy, but because your frequency stopped being ambiguous. When you live in coherence, everything around you finds a new order. An anchor practice to cultivate this state. Every morning and at night, if you wish, breathe with focus on the heart. Inhale for 5 seconds, exhale for 5 seconds. Evoke a calm emotion, appreciation, serenity, love. Then declare inwardly, today I act on the first whisper, and notice the difference. Close with a brief 10-second visualization. You taking the next step, not the grand finale, but the simple, real gesture of someone already in motion. That is enough. The field picks it up. Because in the end, the greatest signal you can emit is your own presence vibrating as truth. Intuition is not a reserved talent, nor a spiritual privilege. It is part of your design. It has always been your most reliable compass, only covered by the noise of urgency, excessive logic, and disconnection from feeling. It doesn't shout because it trusts. It whispers because it already knows. Your role was never to discover magical signs, but to become intimate with the signs already living within you. When the body is in coherence, the mind quiets and the field responds. Everything begins to converse inside and out with a simplicity that disarms control and invites trust. You are not waiting for a sign, you are the sign. Your state is the frequency, your presence is the emission. When you live from this place, the reality around you adjusts like a faithful echo, not to prove something, but because it could not be otherwise. If you want to anchor this field now, write in the comments a compass word for your day. Something that represents the state you choose to cultivate: clarity, listening, lightness, trust, and carry with you the phrase that reorganizes everything. I am not waiting for the sign, I am the sign.